Fraternity of Girth Level Up Collection, y'all. Fogapparel.com. Use code HEAVYLIGHT. You can grab all these badass video game themed shirts. No one ever said that we're not a bunch of giant dorks. I'm just putting it out there. We love video games. We love the culture, man. We love strength. It's all there. Go to Fraternity of Girth, fogapparel.com. Use code HEAVYLIGHT. You know, as far as I can tell, there's no unified training system for anything, right? There's no unified way to lift or train in the weight room. In some sports, there's a few agreed upon methods. Powerlifting coming to mind, weightlifting coming to mind, but there's endless variations amongst those. You know, when you get into the major sports like the baseball, basketball, football, like every program has its own different personality. Every different organization has its own strength coach with their own philosophies and their own coaching trees and everything in there. But Highland Games is especially a weird one because we are not, we're not a scholarship sport. We're not something people come out of high school and college doing. It's usually a second, third, fourth, fifth destination for people that have already been lifting. So the influences that you get that bring people here are pretty darn varied. Why did I say darn? Like I've dropped the worst curse words possible on this podcast, but I just went with pretty darn right there. It's hard to get past this milquetoast suburban upbringing sometimes, guys. It's hard. It's hard to get out of. But yeah, you're going to have people that succeeded as powerlifters, and then they get to the Highland Games and they're successful there. Well, they're going to continue that weight room success and transfer that into throwing, if that's the kind of athlete they are. People that are good Olympic lifters or CrossFit athletes or anything like that, they're going to use those methodologies in their training for Highland Games. Very few people just say like, okay, well, I'm just going to drop it all and do exactly what, another thrower did. Now, yes, that does happen. I say nobody's going to do that, but people do that. The most common ones that I see are people that come from success in other sports generally don't completely abandon and move towards something else because they've already got that baseline and they know how they built the baseline and they may make some modifications. Generally, it's towards being more dynamic and explosive. That's what, when you're a successful powerlifter, let's say, especially if you've trained in a conjugate system, you're going to have some explosive ability, some speed. You're going to have some ability to generate force. But you may really try to tease that out of your training and get more of it and make it a little more, get yourself in motion a little bit more. The throwing itself is training. You got to remember that. Like this, it's not like throwing a 5.5 ounce baseball. It's not like throwing a football. It's not like playing basketball. It's not like being on skates and shooting a puck. Like the stuff that we throw is heavy. Like it in and of itself is part of your conditioning, part of your strength and conditioning, you throwing this stuff. So you're going to tease out those dynamic, movement-based types of stability and strength in your throwing. So that's going to happen. But my point is that people that come from a background where they've had success are going to continue that success and translate it to the Highland Games. They're not just going to learn a new language. They're going to translate the language they already know. But when you get people that are just, gym rats, people that have lifted and kind of want to get out and test it, those are the people that I think are more likely to say, like, okay, I'm going to pick up Training Lab, Matt's Training Lab. I'm going to pick up Dan's Behemoth. I'm going to pick up, any other program, like, I'm going to pick up this track and field program that I found, or this thing by Dan John. Like, I'm going to find, I'm going to adopt that completely. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's a great way for people that are transitioning from non-throwing sports where they lift to throwing sports, and it gives them a little bit more of a purpose-built training system. There are the rare people that come in and they're brand new to everything and they just want to get strong to do Highland Games. It's more rare than you'd believe. But there are people that don't really have a background in anything, but they have seen the games, they've seen the throwers, they've seen the kilts, and they want to be a part of it, and they're building their throwing and lifting at the same time. Those people also, it's great to get those people onto things like Training Lab, Behemoth, and the forthcoming heavy light lifting that I'm working on. But at the same time, sometimes those people they're still new. So, things like 5x5, things like anything that's linear progression based is going to probably work just as well and we're going to reduce the risk overall because we need to get a baseline of strength, and they got to get a baseline of strength to handle this stuff. You're going to throw a 56, you're going to throw a 28, a 22-pound hammer, stuff like that. You have to have a baseline of strength to do that. And there's nothing wrong with the basics, man. I mean, fuck, 3 sets of 10. There's, that's like a running joke amongst meatheads. That's all what we all did when we first started lifting. When we were teenagers, didn't know what to do. But there's not a lot wrong with 3 sets of 10 as long as it's a challenging weight. You're moving weight, man. You're getting it done. There's still a lot of like secondary and accessory movements that I'll program as 3x10 because it fucking works. It's enough volume and it can be challenging. So there's no unified system on how to do this. And to be fair, I don't think anybody has really tried or like tried to unify an approach. And like I said, there isn't really no such thing in any other sport. There is no unified one single thing. But I don't think that anybody has really tried to say like, hey, this is 100% built around a Highland Games athlete. That's not fair to say. I think some of the other authors have done that. But, those are people as well that are coming from a track and field background, powerlifting background, and that stuff's going to get incorporated. Now, in any good training program, though, a lot of that Olympic lifting, the kind of athletic bounding you get from track and field, and even like football, and the raw strength that you get from powerlifting, those things they're going to show up in your training. They're gonna make an appearance there. You can't really, in my estimation, you can't separate. I guess this is what I'm trying to get at, is that you can't separate the program from the person that wrote it, because their personal experiences, their successes and failures, and their biases about what works in the weight room are going to make an appearance there. The best safeguard against that is for people that write programs and people that put, whether it be like I do throwing programming or whether it be lifting programming, is that these people do it with a sample population. They do it with a bunch of athletes and they track data throughout that. So it's not just their experience. Here's what worked for me to get me there. It's more along the lines of, okay, here's what worked with a large variety of athletes. Or with this, not even a large variety. Let's say you want to work with just beginners. Here's what tends to work with the beginners. You want to work with intermediates? Here's what works with them. You want to work with pros, so on and so forth. Find those things that are data-driven that work within there. And, that's something that I kind of had to learn with, my first kind of run-throughs with really doing programming on a larger scale was when, back when I was working with Hate Brand Goods, Matt and I had Training Lab. Shout out to my former Training Lab people. And, I did the throws programming for that. Keegan Dillon, who's a brilliant CrossFit and powerlifting program. Follow that guy on Instagram if you don't. He's a great follow. Keegan, Kegan, Dillon, Dillon, like Dylan from Predator. But I was programming the throwing, and a lot of what I did there was based at first around kind of what Matt had written in Training Lab as a basic outline, and then it sort of was based around what I had done to achieve success. And, I even wrote a peak block that was very similar to my peak block that I did for Lightweight Nationals the first time around, and I was doing the stuff that worked for me. And that, that's a starting place. That's where it starts. But over time, with enough athletes, I found what works for as many athletes as possible. Yeah, I was able to, hopefully, you never know this for sure, but I believe I was able to separate my biases out of the programming and get it to be a little more empirical, based on what had worked with a sample, or worked with, within a sample population, if you want to call it that, of throwers. And I guess the same sort of thing has happened with lifting and training and stuff like that. I like everybody else. I've mentioned this before. I was a guinea pig for the Training Lab program. I was one of the early people. I was one of the kind of the beta testers for it when it was developed. And, I worked with Matt. We tracked progress, and it did wonderful things for me. Some of it was because obviously I had a training background, but I was kind of a raw recruit in terms of throwing. I hadn't really done any kind of track and field or heavy throwing. And my body just ate up the Training Lab training. Just ate it up. PR after PR, I was getting stronger. I was just in my early 30s, feels like a million years ago now, but, it was great. And I really got much more comfortable with the Olympic movements and different types of box jumps and bounding. And that kind of partnership with Matt was great. And but that early on, I adopted that And then as my career progressed, you hit walls or you hit plateaus and things you don't progress. So you kind of program jump, or you program yourself, or, you outsource it to somebody else, like a coach and things like that. And through you'll make progress. It'll be, 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of stuff. But you kind of figure out through your training age, even though I said I started with the training lab thing in my 30s, I've been lifting since I was a teenager for sports, and not thoughtfully lifting, but lifting, and doing strength and conditioning in some way, shape, or form since I was a teenager. And I grew up with a professional athlete. It's not gonna escape me. It's not gonna it's just not gonna miss me. It's gonna be part of my life. And so over that training lifetime, you get a little bit of the Bruce Lee effect, a little bit of the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, right? You get the keep that what is useful, discard that which is not, for you personally, because just like martial arts is, I believe that training, lifting, and throwing are honest expressions, as Bruce would have said. They're honestly expressing the human body, honestly expressing yourself, and I think that is kind of the level that you want to reach before you start telling other people what to do, before you start making suggestions how people should do their training, and kind of how you can guide them to their own personal expression. Programming is a part of that, for sure. And but I think people need to have the training experience to know that each individual is going to be different and respond differently to training. So how do you build training to where you're casting a broad enough net to where people can make progress regardless of those individual differences? And then your job as a coach is to drill down and reinforce differences or variations they make that make progress, or to extinguish variations they make that are not, that they picked up because they thought they were cool or they might enjoy, but they're not progressing them towards the goal. So that's that's the ins and outs of coaching. And that's what you want to do with programming. You want to hit specific needs, but you don't want to get so overly specific that you're going to exclude people. That you're going to completely exclude somebody with a movement or with a stimulus or something like that. I'm deep diving into the programming side of stuff. But that's where you need to be, I think. And that's kind of where I got over time and that's kind of where I've landed now, in where heavy light lifting is where I am lifting, is that I'm lifting in a modified conjugate periodization style. If you've read the heavy light book, I make no bones about it. I straight up shoplift things, as I've said, from Louis Simmons to apply to throwing, because I believe that you can periodize your throwing, and I believe that there can be a conjugate dimension to it because we have heavy and light implements, and those train different stimuli. So, that it was a kind of a no-brainer for me at this point in my career to move towards a modified conjugate system, because I also know myself in that I need a change in stimulus regularly. Not even just for training, but for the mental side of things. I need to change my primary movement. I need to change the new challenge. I have very much I'm very high in openness to experience, if you want to get into the personality side of things, and I like dealing with change. There are people that struggle with change. There are people that are okay with change. I happen to be one of those people that thrive in change situations. Sounds all cool to say, but actually that can be a real pain in the ass sometimes when life requires that you put your head down and keep with the task at hand. And again, you can call it training ADD if you want to, but I think finding the middle ground with a conjugate system that every 2 weeks I can change my max effort movements and I can modify secondary movements and accessories to get what I want out of that particular day or what I'm feeling, and that I've become a little bit more instinctive over time. I think that helps a lot. And then one of the reasons I kind of fired up the mics to talk about this was one thing that appears in my training and appears in the heavy light lifting training as well is conditioning circuits. Straight up, if you're going to call them this, they didn't patent this kind of workout or anything, but like a CrossFit style Metcon or whatever. What was today's? I even put it on Instagram, but I just finished a little while ago. It was a 6-minute AMRAP, which is not that long, but it was 4 box jumps, 6 med ball slams, 8 kettlebell goblet squats. Just reps and reps and reps, getting a little bit of stimulus, probably getting enough reps to get a little bit of muscle building, testing my lungs, just a little, nothing crazy. But that's got to be part of what you do. I'm sorry, it does. That has to be, you don't have to do it every single day. You don't need to be a CrossFit athlete. You don't need to go to the games. You don't need to be a marathon runner. But this idea that like cardio is unnecessary for a Highland Games athlete, that's not right. Because every throwing athlete, and look, I'll be the first one, and I have maybe been the first one to vehemently say, we are not track and field, but still, it's a similar style of athlete. If you're looking for an analog on the style of athlete you're trying to build, there it is. You know, those programs do conditioning. Go back, I don't know, 10, 20 episodes or something like that. Listen to the Pirate Captain talk about his experience at University of Texas as a shot putter. You know, the guy's running stairs. He's doing body weight work. He's doing conditioning circuits because he needs to be in shape. Not when he's going 7 feet across the ring. You know, as a Highland Games athlete, you don't need cardio to get, you know, across a 9-foot box to throw or to do 3 winds and throw a hammer. Although sometimes that can be exhausting. Let's not lie. If you say that you haven't been breathing hard at the end of a hammer throw when you're listening to this, if you can say that confidently, you're a liar or you're not throwing a hammer intensely enough. So. But yeah, that's you don't need the cardio for that. What you need conditioning for, metabolic conditioning, is so you can train with high quality for longer. So you can continue to train with quality repetitions and actually get good intense repetitions or get what you're trying to get out of the workout, whether it's maximal effort, whether it's dynamic effort, whether it's movement, whether it's a throwing session. You need to be in a little bit of shape so you're not out of breath and just a pile of shit after a few throws. That's part of the deal. That's part of being an athlete. Look, if you're going to be a hobbyist and you're just going to show up and you're going to throw and scream and drink, that's fine. I don't care. That's whatever. But that's usually not the people that are listening to this podcast. That's usually not the people that are signing up for throws programming, you know, doing lifting programming, having coaches. That's not you. You understand this, but you need to understand that at least once a week, which is what heavy light athletes get, at least once a week, you're going to get something where the clock's running, and you're going to get something where your heart rate gets up and you're breathing hard. Because you need to be an athlete. Do you need to be an endurance athlete? Do you need to be Cam Hanes out there, you know, run a marathon so you can shoot a bow in the mountains? No, you don't need to be him. You don't need to do any of that stuff. You need to be David Goggins yelling God knows what at the camera while you're screaming at people, while you're running. I don't know. You don't need to be that. If you want to, you can scream at people while you're doing your throws, videos or whatever. Have somebody else film you. You can scream things at them about how they're not motivated enough. Really works, really gets people up and going. But yeah, you need to have it. You don't need to have it for those things. You need to have it so you can train better, so you can be an actual athlete. And you will find that these conditioning circuits, to me, are way better than just road work for athletes. Road work builds capacity and road work builds mental toughness. But to me, I found these thrower WODs, as I call them, these conditioning workouts, you know, you usually you're either moving your body through space. You know, look at the 3 movements from today. Box jump, moving quickly through space, moving my body. Med ball slam, it's a throw. It's a short range, you know, not complicated one, but it's a throw. I'm imparting velocity to an implement. And a goblet squat, that should speak for itself. It's a front squat with a kettlebell in your hand. Like that's a kettlebell in your hand. It's not a mystery why those are good for throwers. You know, you're exerting force against implements and you're moving your body. So that's what my kind of thrower WODs are going to be. They're not, sometimes there may be road work, there might be rowing and things like that. Rowing's fantastic, by the way. If you hate running, rowing is fantastic. I know those are expensive, but that concept or the concept 2 that I have out there, like that is one of my favorite pieces of equipment for conditioning because you can sit down. You get a little computer screen. You can play like a fish game on there. It's cool, man. You can play darts, which, I don't know, that's not that much fun. But those are going to crop up once in a while. Those things are going to crop up in the training and, you know, whatever, but it's not going to be the focus. The focus will be like little micro versions of these big movements that we do to train ourselves as throwers. You know, like a kettlebell clean and jerk or a kettlebell snatch instead of a full clean and jerk and snatch. But this way, you can do 75 of them in 10 minutes. And you wire up the machine, you reinforce good patterns, and you're moving over and over and over again. And higher repetitions are going to build muscle. They're going to codify those nervous system connections. They're going to make those things fire more automatically. If you do them correctly with good technique, all of a sudden, like if I have you do a med ball, wall ball shot put, and I have you do it with proper technique, and you're doing that, 10 of them in a set for 12 minutes or something like that, you may do 100. And that's 100 proper pushes of an implement away from you, where you have to activate your right leg if you're a right-handed thrower. You have to activate your drive leg. You have to create separation, and you have to extend on a finish. Oh man, doing that 100 times would suck as a thrower, huh? And then you're going to turn and do it from the other side. You're going to do it from the left side, which is even better at reinforcing the nervous system, at reinforcing reinforcing movement, or let's say that, reinforcing quality movement, doing it from the other side. In the off season, when I program throwers, sometimes they do stuff, they'll do like hammers and things like that opposite handed. It's not just to fuck with them, although it's pretty fun just to fuck with them. But it's not just to fuck with them, it's to help reinforce things as we're building them. It's nice because it's like you can see a reflection of things and be like, oh, well, when I don't have to count on my strong right side, to do this, and I have to get my left in position, the position really matters a lot more, doesn't it? So yeah, that's my little soapbox about conditioning circuits, and I already posted on social media about it. So there's my stance. Those are my feels about the conditioning. Speaking of feels, Sport Kilt feels fantastic. You see that segue? That is some high level stuff right there. That is high level. But Sport Kilt seriously does. Like I've had to borrow other kilts before. And I'm sorry, nothing beats Sport Kilt's materials. The blend that they use is lightweight. It resists moisture a little bit, which is fantastic because there's lots of either sweat coming from out of me or liquids, booze, and all sorts of stuff flying towards me at a games or coming from the crowd or whatever. Maybe they're when they spit at me because they're disgusted with me. That Sport Kilt repels spit from the crowd. But it's a fantastic material. They're the best in the game. The best in the games. They absolutely support what we do. It's no question. Sport Kilt, used it my whole career. I will continue to use it forever. I also got my multicam hat. They sent me another one. Thanks, James. Because I was fishing on the beach and a big gust of wind, a storm came, blew it off my head and blew it back into like the tall grass, like past the vegetation line. I could not find it because it was like brown and green vegetation and a multicam hat. So kudos to the camo selection because I could not find it back there. And I'm too much of a wimp to walk around in that wet, sticky grass full of snakes and bugs and stuff like that because I didn't have any shoes. So thanks again. But get the multicam hat. That thing looks pretty sweet. Sportkilt.com. Use code HEAVYLIGHT. So what is the right program for you? That's at some point you're going to have to come up with that. Like it's just like diet though. Like the easy answer is just like diet. It's whatever one you stick to. That's the one that's going to work. But that's not just, we're not looking for what works a lot of times, especially as athletes with relatively short time, with real lives, with jobs and families, because like I said, this is a later in life sport. In general, not a lot of like 18-year-old recruits that dedicate their whole life to this. So what you do want is not just something that's effective, you want something that's a little bit optimal for your chosen hobby. And that's what early on, like Training Lab did for me, and I know like other programs like Behemoth do that, and I know that people that work with Tom Soroka and other coaches like him, they get that out of their program. And that's the goal. That's what you want. You want something that's not, general fitness is great, especially if you're newer. I would rather have you tilt towards that, but we want to optimize for throwers. We want to get you in better shape, and we want to get you stronger and more explosive in the context of delivering force to an implement, though. And look, nothing beats throwing. Throwing is king. Throwing is the thing that makes you better at throwing. Lifting supports those efforts. Lifting supports and augments those efforts. What you do in the weight room, what you do with a med ball, what you do in conditioning, those things support those throwing sessions. You got to think about the weight room as that. That's why that question that so often crops up is like, what lift should I do that will help with hammers? All of them. All of them. Like, what's going to help me the most with weight over bar? Should I deadlift this certain amount? Should I be deadlifting 600 so I can throw a 15-foot weight over bar? No. Do all of them. There are plenty of people that throw a 16-foot weight over bar that don't deadlift 600 pounds. Yeah. Weird, right? It's a throw. So what you have to get, the mindset you have to get into your head, not all of you, some of you are very smart. I don't mean to be so insulting. Some of you are very bright and you're very special. But what a lot of people need to, especially when they're newer, and this is totally understandable, everybody wants to try to optimize in this way. But they think in terms of like, well, this lift will help this. If I get my bench up, I'll throw stone farther. Probably not. If you're already hitting like at the upper end of your ability with great technique, then okay, yeah, adding 50 pounds to your bench will add some distance, for sure. And I'll never tell you not to add weight to your bench because, hey, it's cool, right? It's a fucking cool lift. And you can show off to your buddies and stuff. I would say if you're a dude, you can get girls, but you know that's not going to be the case. It's just going to attract more dudes. But that's okay. There's no one for one. That's not how it works. Get stronger in all those lifts. Get more explosive. Be able to clean more. Be able to snatch high pull more. Be able to box jump more efficiently. Not higher. Just box jump more efficiently, more explosively. And you will throw better. There's no one-to-one like get this lift up and this goes up. Nicholas McPhee, he's a very strong athlete, and he throws in the lightweight class. And he helped me with my weight cutting actually for the Arnold, because that was one of the bigger cuts I had to do. It was like 9 pounds or something like that. And but awesome dude. And this is a dude that's trying to hit some big numbers in the WOB. I think he's shooting at 19 right now. He's got a standard setup. And this dude, I think he's got a 7-bill deadlift. He's a legit. I'm sorry, Nicholas, if I got your numbers wrong, man. I haven't memorized that. I don't even know my own numbers, so take that for what it's worth. But he's got a huge deadlift. He's massively strong, does strongman and powerlifting. And he was the first one to say, like, I guess that doesn't translate. And you know what? To a certain extent, he's right and he's wrong. Because him deadlifting that much probably makes him hitting 16 and 17 a lot easier than it would be for somebody like me. That's where it helps. But to get to that next level, he could deadlift his ass off, or his face, whatever part of him you wanted him to lift off. He's got a nice face, though. He's got a friendly face. I'd rather he keep that. But he could do that and get another 20, 30, 40 pounds in a deadlift, and he still wouldn't clear that 19 feet without throwing to get at it, without becoming more explosive, without having a better, more efficient hip extension, and without watching the path of that implement. Like learning the path of that implement and optimizing the path. So throwing is king. But the lifting supports that. If he can add that, all that technique work, all that work on the path of the implement, all that hip extension, like that precise hip extension work, and then he can also deadlift what he can deadlift, then he's going to hit those numbers. No question. Maybe even more. But he knows that. So, I joked with him like it turns out weight of a bar is a throw. Well, weird. And you have to treat it as such. It's not just a strength event, and all of them are that way. That's why you got to get rid of the what lift is going to make everything better. Doing all of them and being in better shape and not being out of breath when you walk up a flight of stairs is going to make you throw farther. I know it sounds like blasphemy, but it's been proven right time and time and time again that the best in the world are also pretty damn good athletes. I mean, Dan McKim, that dude can move. I don't know if you've ever seen him lift or if you've seen him in person. But when it comes time to move and actually be precise, he's very, very athletic. Spencer's another great example. Spencer's, by a lot of people's estimation, he's the best right now. And so shout out to, who was it? Was it Nicholas Robinson that said that? No, it wasn't Nicholas Robinson. Somebody said that to me. They went on it was Kyle. Kyle Kaminsky. Shout out to Kyle Kaminsky. He said that he kind of made some comparison between Spencer and Tiger Woods, that he might be like the Tiger Woods of Highland Games, which is funny, but also maybe a little true when he's breaking all the records and changing the way that the sport is competed. So, yeah, there could be something to that. But, watch some of his training videos, go back. He's not just a big monster lifting big heavy weights. He can jump. He can move. He's got a good box jump. He's dexterous. He can explode. He can change direction. He's got all that stuff going for him. When Matt Vincent was a Highland Games world champion, or just a year or two after, he could do a muscle up on rings at 285 pounds. That's no fucking joke. So you have to accept that you need to be an athlete. And I know that nobody's going to disagree with me out and out, but some of you are going to disagree when you go into the weight room, unintentionally. Because you're going to go do the stuff that's fun. You're going to lift heavy. You're going to lift heavy singles and stuff like that. And that's, again, but that's the beauty of conjugate, by the way, of any sort of like modified conjugate system for Highland Games, is that you do get to lift heavy. You get to do some heavy singles once in a while. But you have to work in that other stuff. You have to do conditioning. You have to be explosive. You have to be able to move, because that's what good throwers do, man. That's what being a thrower is all about. And that's why this is so much more fun for people. That's why we get people that are done with powerlifting and done with, I don't want to say strongman because it is pretty athletic and mobile, but they come from Olympic lifting, or they get done with CrossFitting and they want to try a new sport or something. It's because this is fun. Like, it's strength and it's testing yourself, and it's got that air about it of like that classic strength sport, but you get to train to not just be big and strong. You can be an athlete too. You train to be explosive and dynamic, and explosive athletes are so fun to watch, man. That's why even though offensive linemen and defensive linemen are some of the most fantastic athletes at their size that anybody's ever seen when you're watching the pro game especially, but it's the reason wide receivers get all the shine, man. They're so dynamic. Like, their kinesthetic awareness, their explosiveness, and their speed that just resonates with people, man. That movement, that style of movement resonates with people. So, and side note, being an offensive lineman at a decent level, not a bad base for coming into throwing, by the way. I've seen a lot of guys, because of the footwork and because of how technical it is to be a big man in football, it's a pretty good base. But that's, we all like that stuff. And I think as people develop as athletes, they come to this sport because they like the kind of ballistic side of it. They like this, they like the dynamic side. They like the fact that, you're spinning, like the best athletes in the world look like they're spinning at the speed of light when they take the weight over bar, the weight for distance. Some of them in the weight over bar, they spin for it, but not the speed of light when you're spinning for the weight over bar. Because you got to pull it like from your big toe basically to above your head. That sucks. So, but like when you're throwing the hammer, how dynamic and explosive somebody like Dan looks when he's doing that. That's attractive to people that have only dealt with a barbell or really heavy implements, or grinding things out, or just lifting to make their body look better. It's because it's like that classic athleticism. It's like the track and field, the athletics, the wrestling. It's all those things that we're attracted to, like hitting a home run in baseball. That's dynamic and explosive and fast. You don't just do that with raw top end strength. So I think that's the attraction. So train for that as well. Like, go into the training for this sport, like philosophically. Yeah, man, weightlifting philosophy. Go into it philosophically, understanding that you have to be a different kind of athlete. Is that you are now training to be a thrower, and what you're doing in the weight room supports this. It doesn't make it. That's the difference. And that's shaking off a lifter's mindset, is that, the lifts are the be all end all and they build themselves. Now what you're doing in the weight room supports this, and it makes you able to practice and hit positions and create pace better when you throw. But it's not the be all end all. And plus, fucking lifting weights is cheating. Heavy Light is brought to you by Throw Bros. Throw Bros is the only online store for Highland Games athletes. Gear up, get throwing. Use code HEAVYLIGHT, all one word. You're going to save 10% at throwbros.com.